I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when the notification appeared on my phone. A charge that made my stomach tighten. Pacific Voyage Cruises. $11,200. I reread the amount twice. Certain it had to be an error. But the digits stayed fixed like an accusation. When I called the bank, the voice on the line confirmed it had been authorized from the secondary card attached to my account. The one my mother had borrowed just for emergencies. By the time I hung up, I could already hear her footsteps coming down my hallway. Light and self-satisfied. She walked in without knocking. The scent of her perfume filling the kitchen. "I knew you'd find out eventually," she said with a breezy laugh, tossing her keys on my counter. "Brittany needed this trip after that awful breakup. You know how fragile she's been. I told her she had no right to use my card. And she waved me off as if I were scolding a child. Oh, please. Monica, you make more in a month than your father and I ever did in a year. It's family money." I tried to keep my voice steady while the numbers on my screen blurred together. "That's fraud, Mother," I said. And she actually laughed. "Fraud. Good grief. Don't be dramatic. We're family, we share things. Besides, you know your sister deserves a little joy." She picked up an apple from the bowl, inspecting it like a critic. "You really shouldn't stress over these things. It's unbecoming." Her tone was so casual that for a moment I wondered if I had imagined the theft entirely. When I asked who else was going, she answered easily. "Your father and I. Of course. We haven't had a real vacation in years." I reminded her they had gone to Florida last summer. And she shrugged. "That doesn't count. We stayed with your aunt." The audacity was breathtaking. She spoke as if she'd done me a favor. As if draining my account was a gesture of love. As she moved toward the door, she added, "You'll understand one day. Sweetie, you've always been the responsible one." The door closed behind her with the same finality as a signature on a contract I never agreed to. I stared at the charge again, Pacific Voyage Cruises, $11,200, and felt something shift inside me. It wasn't shock. That had burned out years ago. What rose instead was quieter. Colder. The awareness that a line had finally been crossed. The number on my phone wasn't just a transaction. It was a declaration. A reminder that in my family, love had always come itemized. And for the first time, I knew the next statement would read differently. At work that afternoon, the spreadsheets blurred into static, while my mind replayed every quiet withdrawal that had led me here. 3 years of covering the mortgage, taxes, and utilities for the Willow Glen house because your father's back can't take another job and Brittany needs time to recover. I had said yes the first time because it seemed temporary. 6 months at most. But the months turned into seasons. And the seasons turned into years. Each bill I paid became proof that responsibility could be mistaken for obligation when guilt was the currency. I remembered the first time my mother mentioned it so casually. Leaning on the phone, her voice coated in the same sweet fatigue she used when she wanted something. "Honey, you know we're still between places." "Right, just until we catch up on things." I had nodded. Even though I was the only one with anything to catch up on. She never said thank you after that first month. She just began referring to the house as home. As if ownership could be rewritten through repetition. The longer they stayed, the more invisible I became in my own ledger. Whenever I tried to bring it up, she deflected with charm sharpened by practice. "Your father's pain is worse these days." She'd sigh. "Or Brittany's therapist says stress delays her recovery." I'd answer, "I'm not an endless account, Mom." And she'd smile as though I'd complimented her wisdom. "Oh, darling, you worry too much. That's why you're successful." I once believed her praise was affection. Now I understood it was camouflage. The latest call came that evening from Brittany. Her voice syrupy with entitlement. "Hey, Sis, could you send me $400 for new luggage? The zipper on mine broke. And you know how Mom hates cheap-looking stuff. I told her I wasn't her bank. And she laughed lightly. Relax. It's not like you can't afford it. That line had become the family's refrain. The anthem of every demand. I ended the call before she could finish. But her laughter echoed through the silence like a debt reminder. Back in my apartment. The numbers lined up in my mind with precision. 3 years of free housing. Repairs. Endless excuses. It wasn't the money that exhausted me. It was the certainty that no repayment would ever come. I stared at the faint reflection of my face on the laptop screen and realized the pattern had never been broken because I had been too polite to stop it. The house. The bills. The calls, all of it had been chapters in a story I never wrote but somehow kept funding. And now, after the cruise charge, I knew the ending had already begun to draft itself. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the house listing glowing on my laptop screen. The same one I had saved years ago when I still believed it would secure our family's future. My fingers hovered over the contact section before I finally typed Claudine Hart's name into my phone. When she answered, her voice carried that brisk warmth I remembered. I said, Claudine. It's Monica Reed. I'm thinking about selling the Willow Glen property. She paused long enough for me to imagine her eyebrows rising. Selling. You've been renting it to family. Right, I told her. They're not tenants. There's no lease. Claudine's tone shifted. Careful and precise. Then technically they're guests. Which means you can terminate occupancy at any time. Are you sure this is what you want? I answered. I'm sure. She asked about timing. And I said, as soon as possible. Her keyboard clicked faintly. The market's still strong. If the home's in decent condition, I could reach out to investors who close fast 7 to 10 days. I asked, would they buy even with people inside? She replied, if they're cash buyers? Yes. They assume the risk. She hesitated again. It can get messy. Monica, family always makes it messy. I said, it's already messy. By the time we ended the call, she had promised to email me documents before morning. The room felt smaller once the conversation ended. Like the air had shifted towards something irreversible. I stared at the open browser tab and whispered to no one. No lease. No right to stay. The words sounded colder, spoken aloud. But they were also true. An hour later, her message arrived with the subject line, Potential Investor Contact. The name beneath it was Harlan Pierce. All cash buyer. No contingencies. Claudine's note was short. He specializes in quick closes. If you want to move forward, call him tonight. I read it twice before dialing. A deep voice answered. Calm and businesslike. I introduced myself and explained. The property's mine outright. I'm looking for a fast sale. He said. Condition, I told him it was well maintained. Price range, he asked. And I repeated Claudine's estimate. He didn't hesitate. If everything checks out, I can close in 7 days. When the line went quiet, I realized my hands were steady for the first time all evening. He said, shall I send you the preliminary offer? And I replied, yes, please do. Before we hung up, he added, you'll sleep better once this is done. I didn't answer. I only looked again at the listing photo, the house that had become a monument to guilt, and pressed save on the draft contract waiting in my inbox. The next afternoon, I met Claudine at a small cafe near her office. The kind of place where every conversation sounded like a transaction waiting to happen. She slid a folder across the table and said, Harlan's serious. He's done this before, clean. Fast. No questions. I asked what he needed from me. And she replied, just confirmation that the title's clear and a few signatures. He'll handle the rest. I nodded. and she lowered her voice slightly. Monica. Once we start, it moves quickly. Are you ready for that? I said. I've been ready for 3 years. She connected me to Harlan through a video call, her tone switching to business mode. His face appeared steady. Professional. Unreadable. I understand you're looking for a 7-day close, he said. I confirmed it. The property's occupied, he asked. And I told him. By family. No lease. He gave a small nod. That simplifies the paperwork. Once funds clear, we'll issue a 30-day notice. You won't have to deal with them directly. Claudine glanced at me. Waiting. And I said, that's exactly what I want. Harlan asked about the house's condition, and I told him everything had been maintained: roof, plumbing, appliances, he said. I'll offer Duce Cinqued 000. Cash. No contingencies. I repeated the number quietly, then said, deal. He smiled slightly. I'll send the preliminary documents tonight. You can sign electronically. We'll wire the deposit as soon as they're executed, Claudine added. You'll need to confirm there are no outstanding liens. I said there weren't. Harlan ended with a calm, then congratulations in advance. That evening, the documents arrived, and I scrolled through every line before reaching the signature page. There was nothing complicated, just the clean language of finality: seller, buyer, date of closing. I entered my name, pressed submit, and felt the email confirmation land seconds later. The number 265000 blinked from my inbox like a verdict delivered by logic itself. Before shutting down the computer, I opened social media out of habit and saw the new post from my mother. She stood on the deck of a cruise ship, the sun behind her, champagne glass raised. The caption read, "Family vacations are the best reward for hard work. Thanks to my wonderful daughter for making it possible." I stared at the screen and murmured, "You're welcome." My reflection in the monitor looked calm, detached, almost professional. Claudine texted the next morning: deposit received. Closing scheduled for Monday. I replied with a simple "thank you." She sent back a thumbs up emoji, followed by, "You'll get confirmation once funds clear." I turned off my phone and sat at the kitchen table, the same place where the $11,200 charge had first appeared, and thought about how easily the process had unfolded. No confrontation, no chaos, just paperwork and timing. 2 days later, she called again to confirm that Harlan's legal team had filed the property transfer. "It's official," she said. "He'll post the notices today." I asked. "They'll have 30 days. "Right," she said. "Yes. Standard procedure." I thanked her again, and she hesitated. "You're remarkably calm about this," she said. I told her, "Calm is what comes after panic runs out." She didn't respond, just said, "You did everything right." When I hung up, I realized I hadn't looked at the charge again since that first morning. It no longer mattered. The number had been replaced by another, larger one that belonged entirely to me. I stood at the window and pictured the house on Willow Glen, sunlight sliding over the porch where my parents used to sit. For years, it had been the symbol of their control. Now it was a line item closed and reconciled. The sale would finalize before they even docked back from the Caribbean. And for the first time in my life, every balance was exactly where it should be. The call came the morning their ship docked, my phone vibrating across my desk as I finished a report. I answered without thinking, and my mother's voice burst through, sharp enough to cut. "Monica, what the hell did you do? We came home and the locks are changed," I said quietly. "The property was sold last week," she gasped. "Sold? You can't sell your parents' house," I told her. "It was never yours to begin with." Her voice cracked between disbelief and fury. You ungrateful child. After everything we sacrificed for you, I said. You didn't sacrifice. You borrowed. And you never paid back. She shouted. We're family. Monica, who does this to their own blood, I answered. People who are tired of being robbed politely. There was a silence before she hissed. You've humiliated us. I replied. No. I just stopped funding the performance. Brittany's voice appeared next. Breathless and indignant. You ruined our lives. You know that I don't even have a place to sleep. I said. You've had 3 years of free rent. You can afford a motel. She snapped. You're jealous because Mom and Dad love me more. I almost laughed. If that's true. Then maybe they'll let you move in with them wherever they end up next. She shouted my name. But I ended the call before she could finish. 10 minutes later, a video call request appeared from my mother again. This time while I was still in the office. I answered on speaker. My coworkers quietly listening as Diana's voice filled the room. You're heartless, she said. Her eyes wet but fierce. We're your parents. And you sold the roof over our heads. I kept my tone even. It's not a roof. It's an asset. And it's been draining me for years. She said. We gave you life. I replied. And I just gave it back to myself. My father's voice entered the background. Low and uncertain. Sweetheart. Your mother's upset. Let's talk this through. Maybe we can find another arrangement. I told him. The arrangement ended when you started treating me like an ATM. The buyer will give you 30 days to vacate. That's the law, he said softly. We thought we could trust you, I answered. You trusted my bank account. You never asked about me. My mother cut in, her voice rising again. We'll take you to court for this, I said. Then the court will remind you the deed was in my name. The line went quiet for a few seconds before Brittany's voice returned. This time pleading. Please. Monica. I can't do this. You know, I'm not good at surviving alone. I said. That's not my fault. Brittany. You've been rehearsing helplessness for years. She cried. You're not human. I said. No. I just stopped pretending money grows on guilt. The call ended with a click that felt like the closing of a door that had been left open far too long. Later that evening, Claudine forwarded the official notice confirming the transfer had recorded successfully. My phone kept buzzing with texts, but I didn't read them. I went outside for air and looked at the lights of Santa Rosa fading into dusk. I knew their anger would stretch for weeks, maybe months. But the noise no longer reached me. The silence that replaced it wasn't cruel, it was earned. In that quiet, I understood that consequences aren't punishment. Their balance finally restored. 2 months later, the letter from my attorney arrived with the final paperwork, confirming the sale had cleared without dispute. Claudine called soon after, her voice lighter than before. The buyers finished renovations, she said. A young couple moved in last weekend. I told her. Good. The house deserves people who see it as a home, not a favor. She laughed softly and said, You did the right thing. When the call ended, I sat in the park near my apartment, watching the early sun break through the branches. The air smelled of something new. Though nothing around me had changed, my phone buzzed once more, a brief text from my father. We found a place. Don't worry about us. I typed. I wasn't. Then deleted it before sending. Some words were meant only to be admitted, not delivered. Later that day, Claudine forwarded a photo of the renovated property. Its windows bright. Its lawn trimmed. No trace of the life that had drained me. I whispered. It finally looks peaceful. The number that once haunted my bank account now meant nothing. What stayed was the quiet proof that I had ended something that needed ending. As the sky turned pale gold, I thought about how endings rarely feel like triumphs, they feel like breathing after too long underwater. My family would rewrite their story. And I would let them. For the first time, the silence between us didn't ache. It just felt like freedom. Thank you for staying with my story until the end. If it found a place in you, share it so someone else might breathe a little easier tonight. Every listener helps these stories keep their quiet pulse alive. Subscribe, and let's keep walking toward peace. One true voice at a time.